But I was led astray the day you walked away. You were the clock that was ticking in my home. Changed my state of mind.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Love so hard to find.
we got him.
I thought that emulation was completely legal. I thought that there was nothing that Nintendo could possibly do to shut down piracy sites. I thought the FBI was going to sit by and do nothing, you know? I thought Nintendo didn't have a case. I thought emulation was legal. And what happens? You know, after the Ryujinx thing, after like literally owning Yuzu, Nintendo goes out and shuts down even more piracy sites. Not through the help of the courts, but with the help of the FBI. Trump himself is on Nintendo's side. Like, it's possible he signed the documents to do it. You know, that is just how clearly in the wrong the emulation community actually is. And it really needs to be said because I am sick of every single time a new Nintendo game comes out like, oh, I'm going to emulate that. Like, no, you're not. You know, even if you could, that's illegal. And people are like fighting for this. You know, they're doing everything they can to gaslight you to think that emulation is easy, that it's legal, that like there's nothing wrong with it. But the reality is quite a bit different. You know, like people are getting fined for this. You know, people are getting thrown into prison for this, you know, and like still you have like the PC master race just sitting there, you know, with their pacifiers just being like, oh man, Nintendo is for kids. Like, you know, while PC gaming is free, like, and meanwhile, while like the payment processors like censor content on Steam, you know, like they're coping and seething and have been for a long time over the success of Nintendo Switch. You know, they really thought the Switch 2 wouldn't be successful, that Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza wouldn't be successful, that the third-party games wouldn't be successful. They really thought that PC gaming was going to thrive and be successful because of piracy. Like, oh, PC, you can emulate that. And it just isn't true. You know, this is the grim reality that the emulators need to understand, you know, that what you're doing is not legal. And as the hobby grows and as the laws become more and more clearly defined, as like more and more, you know, resources are dedicated to putting a stop to these crimes, you're going to see more and more people get cracked down on it. You're beginning to see a lot of this already, you know, like one of the things that interests me is how like, you know, YouTubers who are shilling the, you know, the Chinese knockoff, like handheld, like, you know, ROM things, you know, they just take a bunch of Nintendo games and put them into like this cheap piece of hardware and everybody like just soy jacks over it because it's not an official Nintendo made product, you know, like those things are getting shut down, you know, like people are like, you know, that Italian guy just got like, they went after him for like, you know, promoting that brand on YouTube. And that's like, that's going to be a real thing, is that you are not going to be allowed to come out and like openly promote these brands the way you have been. In fact, like you aren't really allowed to do it now. If anything, just look at Dolphin, you know, like a free open source thing, supposedly like this completely legit piece of hardware, software, could not release on Steam. You know, like Gabe Newell like shit his pants and had to beg Daddy Nintendo for permission. Like, is this okay to be on my storefront? And then they said no, because no, of course it's not okay. And so Gabe had to like, you know, block it from Steam, you know, like a little baby. Like, oh, he wanted his cookie, but like he hasn't had, like, he's just, this is the reality of PC gaming. Okay. You know, this is like the grim, just peel back like the surface layer of like, you know, of like, you know, these smug, like autistic retards on YouTube. Like if you just peel back the layer and start looking at what's actually happening, the reality is so much different than like the narrative online. Like it's kind of shocking seeing like, Switch 2 day one outselling the Steam Deck, and yet seeing is like so many people in like the dedicated gaming sphere like seriously think that like Steam Deck is going to remain competitive, that the Steam Deck 2 could stop the Switch 2, it because of piracy. Like that's always been the go-to cope with these alternative pieces of hardware, is that like, well, I can just pirate things on it. And it's becoming more and more obvious that the law is not on your side. Okay, it is actively against you. You are getting quashed. Like how Pirates of the Caribbean 3, like how the East India Trading Company is like shutting, killing all these pirates, and like ending the golden age of piracy, which is unfathomably based, by the way. Like the movie does this thing where it tries to make pirates going extinct to be like a bad thing, when like realistically, like these guys are like going around like raping and killing people, like they're stealing shit, right? They don't respect anyone at all. Like pirates are the most filthy, depraved, degenerate, like disease ridden, like just awful people ever. Okay, like the pirate fantasy is fun, but like the reality is quite a bit different. And that's the thing about like, modern day pirates, video game pirates. Like it's the exact same nonsense. Like companies can afford for me to steal from them. Like I don't owe anyone anything. I'm entitled to this. I'm high IQ. Like all the giant copes that like these guys have like thrown out over the years. Like it really needs to be said. Like and I have been saying this for a long time. Like what they've been doing is illegal. And the reality of the situation is we are approaching the day of the rope, just like, at the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean 3, where you have that long line of people just like getting necked, right? It's the same exact thing, like I have pride in being a pirate. Like, okay, but I have a functional society, and I I respect that more. I don't think most people agree with you, bro. And that's the reality of the situation, right? That's the situation we're in right now. That's the standard we're in right now. That's what we're witnessing. Like we're witnessing the end of the golden age of video game piracy, right? This stuff is getting cracked down on. It is not a major mainstream thing. It is certainly not a replacement for like dedicated Nintendo hardware. And you are going to see more and more people like openly like speak out against like the behavior of the piracy community, because these guys are just completely out of touch with reality. They have no idea like how great Nintendo consoles actually are. They have no respect for them. They don't really understand that like Nintendo consoles are better at PCs than playing games. They'll never admit it. And even now they're coping and seething over the fact that Donkey Kong Bonanza, being a Nintendo Switch 2 game, still has not been emulated. Yeah, we're in that phase of the Switch 2's lifespan where nobody has been able to crack it, and nobody has been able to pirate games early on it, and people are seething about it, and it's getting really evident like where things are going. Like I do think in the near future, I am going to be involved in just like kind of spearheading the anti-PC thing, the anti-piracy thing, because I am sick to death every single time Nintendo does anything, like seeing some fat, smug, like autistic retard, like just sitting there telling me like, I'm going to emulate that someday. Like, no, you're not. You never will. And I am having far more fun playing on console than you ever will have in your entire life sitting on your PC.